What an amazing session last discussion was. Well, coming up next is another panel discussion. Let me give you a brief what we are talking about. COVID-19 may be the toughest crisis this generation has witnessed. The actions that businesses have taken during this time towards their employees, customers, partners, and communities are determining how quickly they build back their credibility. And this is what we are discussing in the next panel, building trust and credibility in the new normal. Once again, I would invite Niveditha Ratakonda, CEO, Big Little Innovations, to moderate the session. Niveditha is an executive with a deep technology background and vast experience ranging from network technologies to cybersecurity to virtual reality. And joining her in the conversation, our guest is Mr. Sameer Garde, President, India and South Asia Association for Regional Cooperation, Cisco India. Welcome, sir. Welcome, Nivedita, once
Thank you,
again.
Akriti.
Thank you, Akriti. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's having a wonderful time at Thai Global Summit. The sessions have been really, really good. Here's another wonderful fireside chat with Sameer, and I'm really honored to have him here as a part of the Thai Global Summit. Um, this is a session on security and privacy and how it has how it's actually being prioritized in a dramatically changed world. One of the objectives that I want to drive in this session is to have entrepreneurs understand the critical role security and privacy play, and to think about it early on. That's because I'm a startup entrepreneur, and we sort of tend to put it out towards the end, but really it's a critical part of it, and maybe explore new ideas in the space. That's some of the things that I want the entrepreneurs to get out of this session. Sameer is a president of Cisco's India and SARC Theatre, where he drives sales, operations, growth initiatives, and investments in strategic alliances in the area. Over a career spanning 28 years, Sameer has led several top performing organizations with an enduring track record across multiple roles and regions. He has a keen understanding of technology and market opportunities, and enables them to drive transformation and capture critical market transitions. Sameer has built and managed global regional businesses in India, Europe, USA, and Asia. He's a highly respected leader who maintains commitment to professional development and inclusion and diversity in the workplace. He holds an engineering degree from IIT Delhi and MBA from IIM Kolkata. He's a long distance runner, and I've seen him run before, but and an amateur photographer, driving holiday enthusiast. Sameer, it's an honor to have you here. Um, so just getting to the and I'm an ex Ciscoer, so I've been with Cisco for 10 plus years, and I was working heading India operations for a startup, security startup. So this for me, this is terrain is actually very familiar. Coming to the topic, privacy and security are not just a compliance obligation anymore for a lot of enterprises. It's actually become a fundamental human right, if I may say. If I may say, it's a critical right for the people working in the enterprises and the customers, and it's critical to building and maintaining customer trust. Early this year, businesses across the globe transitioned to a remote work environment almost overnight at an unprecedented scale and speed, right? Security teams had to work around the clock to empower and protect their newly distributed teams. Some challenges that the enterprises were actually immediately faced with are one, providing access while supporting an almost 100% remote workforce so that they could be secure and connected and be productive at the same time. Second, securing endpoint devices of employees now working from anywhere in the world across unsecured networks. That was the key, right? And third, protecting customer privacy while working. While the way work was done is completely changed for all companies. And the last one, transparently assuring your customers that their business will go on and that we're here to support you. So, Sameer, with all of this happening, right? And you know that some security and trust have been pretty crucial for businesses all along, but COVID seems to have made them a top priority at the highest level this year. So can you just explain how that has happened and how that sort of accelerated the importance to privacy and security?
Sure. Hey, Nivedita, firstly, both to Thai Global and to you and Sridhar, thanks for inviting me for this event. It is indeed a pleasure to talk to so many entrepreneurs. Uh, And like you rightly said, privacy is a fundamental right now. And within that scope, I think cybersecurity has become top of mind primarily because everything is online, right?
Yeah.
Earlier we would say that you would probably buy a few books online from Flipkart. You're probably not exposing yourself too much with that. But today you pretty much do everything sitting at home, right? Besides just working at home. Even the government, through its Digital India initiative, has now made most citizen services available online.
Yeah.
Right now, what that does is, and it has probably accentuated even more during the last 9 months, and we've probably seen most of the digital payment, uh, apps seen massive increase, even more than when it happened during demonetization. Uh, Now, all these things kind of expose you to a higher risk because you're putting yourself out there, your identity is out there, your device is out there, uh, and clearly cyber criminals are not sleeping in this environment, right? So they are also in a position. Hello, am I still there?
Yeah, you are. I can hear you.
So cyber criminals are also equally active in these environments, and they are looking for these vulnerabilities,
Yes.
right? And they are looking at new ways to hack. They're looking at new ways to get your passwords. And so I think that the entire digital landscape and the surface area for digital is increased multifold. So you need to now look at security or cyber security at a level which goes beyond what we used to think about for cybersecurity earlier, which is, cybersecurity used to be about the perimeter,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
It used to be all about
Yeah.
the wall that you create around your enterprise, because everybody went from home in the morning, came
Yeah.
to an office, and there was a wall that you wanted to
Yes.
create, and you just wanted to see that nobody enters that
Yeah.
perimeter. It's gone way beyond the perimeter, right? And it's gone to a level where, if you're working from home, you want the security, but you also want seamless connectivity at the
Yeah.
same time. So even if you're on a VPN, there are times when you don't want to be on the VPN because it adds to latency to some
Mm-hmm.
extent. So once you get off the VPN, what do? Right? How do you secure a person who's getting onto probably 3 billion websites over the next 2 years, right?
Right.
From home. Also, what I'm seeing is that there are organizations who have converted this into an opportunity, right? Now, you think about, I won't name the grocery, e-commerce grocery store, which was recently attacked, right? Or hacked, right? A competitor could actually make that an advantage and say that we are a lot more secure, we care a lot more about privacy. So I think we are seeing a lot of businesses converting this requirement for cybersecurity, this need for cybersecurity by individuals, into an opportunity too. And lastly, I think you mentioned this in the opening remarks. A lot of cybersecurity was bolt on. When I say bolt on, you built an application, you built the network, you built the data center, and you said, okay, now what do I need to do for the security to ensure nobody gets into this data center or into this network? What has changed over the last 9 months is security is embedded everywhere, right? Even at the level of DevOps, when you're building your applications, people are talking about service mesh, which is all about saying how can I ensure that each of those microservices are protected. So it's about getting built in versus being bolt on earlier. So a lot has changed over the last 9 months. I would probably say a lot of this was always on the anvil, uh, most of these innovations. But it's probably got accentuated and accelerated in one sense. And the interesting thing is there's no turning back,
Yeah.
right? So that acceleration will continue going
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like the built-in versus bolt-on. I think that sort of hits home a very clear point that it has to be sort of a part of the product or the service that you're thinking about building, right? That's very critical, especially for entrepreneurs out there who are trying to build new products or services. Thank you, Sameer. Now, So how has I know Cisco? I keep reading about partners saying how great Cisco sales were in the security space and in the last few months, and how Cisco has enabled their customers by giving them free licenses for their security products and so on and so forth. Right? That's wonderful. But so how has Cisco really helped in accelerating this immediate transition to remote work for its customers and enabling its really large partner ecosystem to help their customers? What were the specific things that probably Cisco did?
No, so I think a few things that we did, and more than what we did, I think more than that, customers were demanding a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
What we saw was in the first 2 months, a lot of our customers, government folks, communities that we deal with were just responding,
Yeah.
right? They kind of said, how can you help us get a remote access VPN going, right? And increase the capacity of the VPN 90% or 100%, because most of my people are going to work from home, right? So what I call the respond phase, right? Everybody was just saying, how do I get 90% of my workforce to work from home overnight, right? And as you probably know, because you've been in the engineering side earlier, Niveditha, so you know this, right? The capacity of VPN typically prior to a COVID kind of a situation was not that great, right?
Yeah.
So provisioning that kind of capacity for all your employees was a massive response that we had to be ready for.
Yeah.
Then we looked at the second stage, which was more about retooling. So they said, listen, now we are seeing that people are working from home, but they're not using the VPN, okay? Because they sense a little bit of latency there, right? Especially for certain applications which they want to access. So how can you protect us by figuring out that the DNS that they are going to is not a malicious DNS? Right?
Okay.
So can you help us with some DNS protection solutions so that people who have started working from home have become vulnerable because they don't use VPN? And a lot of the applications that they're going to are straight to the cloud. So they're not even coming back to the data center to access those applications, right? That's the second phase. What we saw was retooling, right? So you responded first couple of months, then you looked at retooling it. And now what we are seeing is a lot more of the conversations around reimagining the security framework, right? So a lot of discussions around what we call Security Access Service Edge, or SASE, right? Which is the new terminology, which was always there, except that now we are seeing people kind of looking at it more holistically and more strategically. So you went from the first 2 or 3 months of response to a bit of retooling the way customers were working from home, to now saying, I want to ensure that I have a service edge which is completely secure. Number one, from a connectivity point of view, I get good connectivity. Number two, from a security point of view, I get DNS protection, I get policy analysis, right? Which is very important. So if you look at DNS protection with SIG, that's the next big thing that we are seeing now. Right?
Okay.
Or then they started saying, what applications should we allow our work from home employees to access or not access? What interactions should we allow our employees to do on those applications? And that kind of granularity is something at the service edge which is very critical, right? And then finally they said, I don't even know whether you are the guy or girl who's supposed to access these animals. So show me your identity, right? Show me your individual's identity, and what is your device's identity, right? You could be accessing this from multiple devices. So I think what we saw is now a discussion which is a lot more about SASE and what we can do for the future next 3 years, because this is here to stay. This hybrid workplace environment is here to stay.
Absolutely.
So I would say that those are some of the things that we are seeing, a kind of a phase-wise discussion. First, just get the people home and working from home from a response point of view, retooling, and then reimagine.
So the one of the trends that you are looking at is SASE, right? SASE. is what you said, and obviously the zero trust part of it, the zero trust deployment, the VPN and the secure DNS and all of these. So, what are the newer trends that you are seeing, Sameer, in terms of that you see continuing, or that you are actually seeing in your customers in adoption? So I understand that they're looking at now it as a holistic end-to-end security plan or a strategy, rather than just one technology at a time, right? What other?
Yeah. No, so I think the big change in the way security is looked at now is probably in 2 or 3 areas, right? I'll talk about each one of them separately, probably. One is, in the earlier phase, you would look at managing a threat separately and building trust separately.
Okay.
Right? There was a concept of saying, I will, if there is a threat, this is what I will do, right? Or depending on the type of threat, these are the responses that I will have. And then I will look at other ways in which I will build trust in the organization. I think what has happened with zero trust philosophy is that we're starting to look at threat and trust being built together, which is a very big change in the way you approach cybersecurity, right? So, there are 3 levels of kind of building threat response and trust in an organization, right? How do you secure your workforce? First, you've got to secure your workforce. Second, you need to secure the workplace, right? You'll be working from multiple locations. You could be working from your home, you could go to the office, you could travel somewhere else and work from there. And you want to ensure, and the third is, of course, the workload, the application itself that you're working on, right? So I think what we're seeing now is looking at threats that can come from 3 or 4 different directions. One is from an identity point of view, workforce. Second is from an application point of view, the workload itself. And third is from a workplace point of view. Where are you going from? So just to elaborate that a little bit, right? If you look at workplace, if you were to be able to see the analysis of the network when you're working from home versus office or from your mom's house, right? The behavioral analysis of the packets itself is now a big field of AI. Right?
Wow.
Think about it from a point of view of, Cisco, as you know, is 60, 70, 80% of the network, right? For enterprises. We get the maximum amount of packet analysis that we can do. So we've applied AI to that to say, if Niveditha is working from home, typically we've seen this kind of network behavior. If there is any anomaly in that, we should be able to catch that, right? And we've seen Niveditha use a certain application in a certain way, right? She's now using it in a different way, right? Is there a way for me to be able to manage that threat proactively, right? And build trust. So if I'm able to now say, Niveditha, you were working from home, I saw some anomaly in your network behavior, okay? I will proactively tell you this is not correct. That is an element of trust that you build at the time of the threat itself. So you're working on these 2 things together, right?
Wow.
Versus having to do it, saying, let me figure out the threat after it happens, and then go back to Niveditha and say, I have managed to stop it, right? And they'll say, fir theek hai, matlab, kar liya tumne baad mein. But that's a more reactive situation. Now I'm doing it much more proactively in the way I manage the threat and the trust.
Wow, that really almost gave me goosebumps. It's because you're looking at behavior and analysis, not from sort of the end point of keystrokes and what the user is doing, but really looking at what's going on the network and looking at it from that perspective, which is really, really wonderful. I mean, and that sort of pulls in together the entire, like you said, you then can exactly know what is an anomaly, from where it is happening, and all of that stuff.
And it goes back to the point that I made earlier, right? It's not a bolt-on solution anymore. Right. I'm embedding security with an AI solution in the network itself.
Right.
Which you are not aware of, but I'll build that trust when something wrong happens.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's really comprehensive. So if you really look at it that way, that's true. So Sameer, so that is an area that's actually very new. in addition to that, what is Cisco's focus on security? How is it changing? You've done a couple of acquisitions, and where, from Cisco's perspective, where do you see are the greenfield areas or the new areas that maybe some of our entrepreneurs can work on, or what is the focus for Cisco on security and trust and privacy?
30 years ago, when I started working, my wife she passed out with me, and she was in the IT side of things. And she was building this monolithic application for Citibank, I remember, right? Where they would sit with 60 other people, coding the hell out of building one monolithic application. 30 years later, my son is doing computer science, and he tells me, Dad, I'm making one small module of an app only for the payment part of the right. So I think the way apps getting developed are very different right. This whole concept of microservices, every app probably has hundreds of microservices, right? Now, each of those microservices have different needs from the network, are getting used differently at different points of time by the users, right? How do you ensure that you are clear, again, going back to the AI piece, how are these microservices interacting with each other during the DevOps piece when you're doing the development or doing the iterations? So where we are now getting into is what is called new concept of service mesh, right? How do you link all these microservices? One from a network point of view, and two from a security point of view.
Okay.
So building in security at the DevOps stage versus building in security at the server level once the application is loaded. So I think this whole concept of service mesh, microservices, lots of startups in this area. We just acquired PortShift, which has an end-to-end portfolio for security for Kubernetes container services. And then we followed that up with Bonsai, which is also in the service mesh area. So the new area that we are looking at is basically application security and microservices security, right? And it's a very, very new area. At the same time, it's probably one of the fastest growing area in security, right?
Wow, that's interesting. I mean, I've worked in security, but again, in the traditional way of looking at security. I think this is completely new. How do these microservices interact with each other? Is there a potential that one of them then becomes sort of the gateway to a malicious software or something like that, right? That's very interesting. So what are, I think one last question would be, in terms of, you've already explained the service mesh part of it, but when you look at enterprise security and whenever I ask you a question, look at it from the network perspective, which is really different from the way that I've sort of gotten used to looking at security, which is amazing. But what are some of the areas like enterprise security perspective? Is there anything else that you see as a greenfield area for startups to work on?
I think, like I said, one is application security, the other is cloud, third is IoT, right? I think these are probably the three big areas of focus even for Cisco. Besides the application piece, which I talked about a little bit in detail, I think anything to do with the cloud in terms of how applications are. Somebody told me the other day, I think it was a year ago, somebody told me how applications are kind of hosted nowadays, right? Parts of the application, parts of the data for that application, database for that application could be on a public cloud. Part of it could be in the private cloud. Part of it could be in your own data center, right? Now think about the interaction that the user has with this application. Right? You got to then ensure that there is security across the entire gamut of cloud, private cloud, and so the whole multi-cloud security solution is definitely one area that we are focused on. Second, that we've now built, we just acquired a company recently in the IoT security area. We call it Cyber Vision, which is basically about how do you marry the IT and the OT security. The way you manage a SCADA network in a in a manufacturing environment versus the way you manage a carpeted network in a campus, right, are very different, right? Because the protocols are millions of protocols for each of these IoT sensors. How do you manage that security? Because while they are different protocols, each of them is an IP address.
Right.
The moment it's an IP address, it's open for and it's susceptible for and it's vulnerable to a hacker, right? So how do you manage those millions of protocols on IoT devices while ensuring that your IT network can talk to that OT network in a more seamless manner? So I think that is probably the third area that we are focused significantly.
Wow, that's amazing. So I think let me summarize this. You've talked about application security. You've talked about service mesh. You've talked about cloud and IoT security as a comprehensive set of technologies that people can look at. I think we're sort of at the end of the session, Sameer. Anything else you'd like to add for the entrepreneurs here? Any message that you wanna pass on to this? This is the largest.
My only thing that I would tell entrepreneurs to do is, guys, when you talk security, don't talk only to the CISO, right? If you're building a product for enterprise, if it's a SaaS product, the typical mode of sales or go to market is to go after the CIO or the CISO. I think in today's world, one of the most important things is how do you ensure you elevate that conversation to the CEO level? Because what was traditionally called risk and compliance, a big portion of that today is actually cybersecurity. And the brand's trust, the brand's value, the customer's trust can all be lost with a few incidences. I mean, we saw today there was a hack of a security company by a nation state. I don't know whether you read the news on that. It's a very big thing. A nation state has attacked a cybersecurity company and hacked them, right? Now, imagine what that security company would be feeling and their customers would be feeling, right? So it's a CEO level conversation, guys. So it's not only a CISO or a CIO level conversation. Take it to the board, take it to the CEO to ensure that this is front and center with them.
Thank you, Sameer. That's actually, but you know what? I think you have to go to the receptive companies. I don't think all the companies have the security at the CEO levels. Discussions, right? It really has to be
every company worth its salt will have a risk committee.
Okay.
It's a mandatory thing for a board of directors. They have to have a risk committee. That risk committee has to have cybersecurity as a big portion of their agenda.
Right. Well, okay. Sounds good. Okay. Thank you, Sameer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
Thank you very much for having me.